Thanks for watching live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good evening and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio Education tonight, the 23rd of January 2024. It's 8 p.m. and Brent, we're back on the airwaves after a week off. So just to explain that we're just going to do this every 2 weeks to as a kind of well-being check-in, as to kind of support ourselves and stuff. As you can imagine, we want to kind of put out good content and well-researched stuff. So we just decided just to do it every 2 weeks now. So please stick with us. You know, there's still high-quality content that's going to come from us, Brent, isn't it? Just in a different way. I think we
get to our age as veteran teachers, you got to pace yourself a little bit more. And we have done 2 years pretty much continuous. On Teachers Talk Radio. I had a couple of months when it was election campaign, but yeah, we sort of felt that we better quality rather than quantity be good for us for a few months, and then we'll probably.
It's the classic. It's a marathon, not a race situation going on, and we're kind of taking some time to kind of look after ourselves as we do it.
My childhood's just been ruined. I found out something the other day. It's just completely destroyed my childhood. Do you know that a roadrunner is 10 miles an hour slower than a coyote?
A roadrunner, as in the roadrunner, beep beep, yeah,
is 10 miles an hour slower than a coyote. So all that running around, all that coyote had to do was just basically run fast, and the roadrunner is. It just shows you, doesn't it? And for instance, American Indians don't do how and that's from a 1955 Disney movie.
Okay, cool, yeah.
There's only one frog in the world that goes ribbit, ribbit. The California tree frog. Well, they probably did go ribbit, ribbit until the recent part. They're probably not left of them now, but the only one frog in the world that goes ribbit, ribbit. And you ask a child to make a frog sound, and they'll go ribbit, ribbit. So that's the second story about teaching controversial history, and about sometimes you are the person in the room going, actually, what you think is true is different to the reality.
Yeah, so but that's quite nice. It's like the QI moment, isn't it? Of like the alarm bell going off.
Well, I've got one of those from QI. That's actually from QI. And I do love that little book of general ignorance. I always love that. Yeah. Fantastic. And those kind of quirky things that, did you realize? I mean, I asked the children the other day, look at the wall and say, what color is that? And they went red. No, it's every other color but red. No, it's reflecting all the other colors. It's absorbing, every other color and reflecting, and then reverse it around. And if you are colorblind, you see it different. And if a dog sees it, sees the shades of gray and black. It's things we do sometimes in education rocks the kids' world, and you go, "Do you know?" And I love doing that. So quality, not quantity. There you are.
That's one of the main things, isn't it? After a stressful day, because sometimes my wife says, "Like, do you still really enjoy it?" And it's difficult to assess that word, but you're right. There are those moments as you kind of claw back through the day where you go, yeah, I did say something today that really fascinated me, or someone said something to me. That's nice the other way, isn't it? When someone says something to you and you go, I've not thought about it in that way before. And that's kind of, the outside the box thinking sometimes really kind of throws you off and say, oh,
I had one of those.
Maybe you are right, yeah.
I had one of those again from the children, and it was talking about Nazi indoctrination. And talking about the way the police state worked, the way it worked in complicity and getting other people to conform, the fear culture, the small numbers of Gestapo were needed because they generated a huge amount of fear, and the fact that ordinary people complied and informed in each other. Yeah. And this very bright young girl just turned and goes, "It's a bit like the witch trials, then, isn't it?" I thought, wow, because if you were accused of being a witch, that's it. You were sent straight. You were done for. And all they had to do was basically try to conform and keep yourself right and not show any signs whatsoever of any sort of annoying anybody. And of course, it was your own neighbors that turned on you. And it was literally watching the calls go over. And I've taught that nearly 20 years, and no one's ever made that connection. And I've never made that connection. There she is. And I says, where are you getting that from? She goes, I was reading about Salem witch trials. And she made the connection between the Salem witch trials and that culture of the Salem witch trials, which the Gestapo then used. And again, just looked at her and went, absolute genius. And you think, wow, you think you're the gatekeeper of all knowledge, and comes from a 15-year-old student. There's something completely bang where she's made the connection. And you go, wow, this job's still good, because you still can be every day astounded by the absolute amazing young people you get to work with. So, which can sometimes keep you fit, healthy, and young.
It's really important, like, for example, I'm in the I'm week into kind of teaching international business, probably one of my favorite units on the BTEC course. And but I've spent probably the first 3 or 4 lessons essentially history, British Empire. We've looked at we've done geography. We've had the map open. We've kind of highlighting little bits, particularly areas like the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal. And and then you talk about kind of like history kind of being written at the same time that you're teaching.
I mean the American Canal, because it's not going to be the Panama Canal anymore.
Well, Brent, that is the point, like literally the point I made. I did say to the students, I have a sneaking suspicion, because this was at 4 o'clock. If you go home tonight, by the time you get home, I'm sure Mr. Trump will say something about imports, exports. Absolute kind of, as a business teacher, I've got business gold for the next lesson. Panama Canal, absolutely wonderful. So that's my clip for the next lesson, and then that's the map on the board. What's the Panama Canal, sir? And we kind of go through the Panama Canal and all that business, and all of a sudden you've got like a really engaged kind of live lesson, haven't you? And sometimes you do get lucky with that, but overall, I've had kind of an interesting week, because my daughter's had to choose her options. So she's choosing her options. And obviously, the teachers are great.
History's in there.
Yeah, history's in there, of course. Yeah. But the vibe that I got was, this is great. The teachers were great, enthusiastic, can't fault the school, great evening, etc., etc. It's not their fault. But I did think, this was the same when I chose in 1995. This is the same. It is the same. And how, it kind of, a shudder kind of came down.
One of the shocking things about it also.
It's exactly the same.
And worse than that, the content is probably the same. As something I spoke to at the last history teach meet, was the lack of refreshing of the history curriculum. We're still teaching the Treaty of Versailles. I love the hand grenade in there, controversially, to some of the luminaries of history teaching and textbook makers, and even criticized the textbook makers for having such a narrow curriculum. And I was advocating that we should be teaching 9/11, Iraq, Afghanistan, the Middle East. My God, with what's going on in the world. And no, it's still the same narrow curriculum. Oh, look, we're doing the same thing in year 9 that we're doing in year 10, and we're doing in 12 and 13. Wow, because it's about school results. It's not about the quality of the education, and that's the problem. But we'll move on to that in our second story about.
We'll go to that. We've got our main topic, which is the are some schools gaming the exam system? So that's what we're going to focus on first. Should we just say a quick hello to our
all schools? I want to make it clear, we're not going to private school bash or independent school bash. The story is about independent schools. However, I do want to widen it out into our schools gaming the system, and I think that part of the problem is we have an exam system that's there to be gamed, and are some schools better at gaming the system, or are some schools just not as. And that's the aspect of looking at the evidence and say, well, who's gaming the system? What benefit is it whoever? Or is that the way forward? Should we all just embrace gaming the systems and forget about educating the children? Which is basically, for me, something akin to you study business, turning education into a business. And it shouldn't be a business. Now, people can argue differently and say, well, parents want results. Do they? But results of what? What does it mean? What results have you got exams? Is this what we're currently doing to educate children? When universities are screaming and saying these kids have not got the depth or breadth of knowledge, when employers are going, these kids have not got the depth or breadth of knowledge or the character, there's a disconnect between exam systems, school success. And in a week when we've heard we've heard politicians basically say, the gains of the last generation in education, and I'm like, what? What are you? Excuse me? And some politicians arguing about, well, this teacher's pay. Went, what? You're not in charge of teachers' pay for 14 years. I mean, I nearly absolutely completely went berserk when I heard some of the statements. When you think you are standing up on behalf of the teaching profession, you are advocating that the education system is a success based upon PISA league tables. Right, great. And therein lies exactly why I wanted to do this story. So there's basically people saying, let's engineer the system so we do well in PISA systems and say we've got a great education system. And don't look under the bonnet. Yeah. Don't look upon the surface. Yeah. Don't scratch. That. PISA says we're brilliant. Don't.
Yeah. Does it broaden it out then to kind of, is the whole system there to be gamed essentially? So if you kind of if you do want to kind of message in and chat to us, you can kind of write in the comments below. That'll get to us. I just want to say quickly hello to our sponsors tonight, because this show wouldn't be kind of possible without them. So we thank them for their support. Thank you to John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore a full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2429 to get 20% off your order. We're also sponsored by USA Today. Your students could study in the USA. USA Study is a one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, applications, and application requirements, all in one place. It's easy. They've got easy to access tools, personalized timelines, expert tips, application templates, exclusive webinars with admission officers to help you as students and stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk because every student deserves the opportunity to shine in the USA. To study with USA Study. And also, as Brent kind of alludes to there, kind of these are ongoing all the time. Brent's done the history one, but now we're doing a kind of overall kind of teachers talk with Teachers Connect talk. So join members of the team from Teachers Talk Radio in Manchester on the 1st of March, Saturday the 1st of March 2025. It's our biggest ever free event. We've got Lee Parkinson, Mr. P, Katie Jones, and Vic Goddard. Goddard, attending, but also my good self and Mr. Brent Poland will also be there doing a kind of live education tonight with everyone, probably over lunch. We'll probably ruin your lunch, and Brent will be signing kind of copies of his calendar and things like that at the end if you want to kind of hang around and speak to him. I think it's about £5 for a selfie, isn't it, Brent? Something like that.
Yeah, but of course, when people meet me the first time, the first thing they say to me is, "What's the first thing people say to me when they meet me for the first time?"
Oh, what a handsome chap!
You're really shorter than I thought. I was getting like, you're really short, aren't you? Yes, thanks for that. My online presence is a lot bigger than my actual physical.
Your online shadow.
My online shadow. Which brings me actually to the three words.
I thought you were going to talk about your shadow and your beard.
I wanted to say this earlier on. This is the fun part. What are the 3 words of the year that the 3 words the kids use the most? So the kids vote on 4,000 kids, and they voted on the word of the year, but they also vote on the 3 slang words of the year. So let's say you don't know these 3, so see, can you get them? As a parent of teenagers, let's see, can you figure out the word of the year?
Yeah.
And then you've got the 3 words, the 3 slang words. I'll give you a clue. One's related to Andrew Tate. One's related to toilets.
I could get cancelled almost straight away here, couldn't I? This could be the first. This show could be over by
keep it clean. Keep it clean.
This show could be done in like.
Keep it clean.
Something about man, ego man. It's all about masculinity.
What we'll do is we'll announce at the end of the show and see if people get the 3 words. The word of the year is kindness. What's the 3 slang words? So kindness was the top word, which is brilliant, and I thought that was brilliant. That kindness was be kind, kindness. That was the top word. I think it was 6-year-olds to 14-year-olds who asked for the word of the year, and then the 3 slang words of the year were then asked about, and they are connected to social media and connected to social trends and stuff. So at the end of the show, we will give you the 3 words of the year and see if you want to pop up and whack them in. See, can we whack them in as much as possible, and how can we weave these 3 slang words of the year? And in fact, I've had some of my year 10s have been educating me in some of the words, like locked in. They say I'm quite a locked in individual. I said, what do you mean? Because you're quite intense. You're quite when you're locked in. I'm like, oh, that's like a gaming term. Yeah, locked in. And the other one is geeked, apparently. So when geeked is kind of thing. And they were trying to infer that my beard is adding a bit of rizz.
Oh, riz, yeah.
But I need a haircut to get more riz, so I need a bit of a cool haircut. But my beard gives me a bit of riz, apparently.
You're not going to go full Roy Keane then? A full bushy.
Do you really want me to go Roy Keane? He's just doing his job. He's just doing his job. What's the problem? He's just doing his job.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't it commented before Christmas that you'd gone full Roy Keane, and I was trying to kind of control the situation. I think
you were trying to infer something that what are the positives in education, and Nathan, one of our hosts, absolutely completely nailed me to the wall with cracking me up tonight, boys. Brent was asked to do something positive, and he has a picture of Roy Keane. So I'm like, yeah, I was in that place. Yeah, we can all do as an Irishman. We can all do Roy Keane, except go home at the 2002 World Cup and walk the dog instead of playing for his country. But thanks for that, Roy.
Should we get cracking? I think this is the problem. Over the break, it's kind of we go into kind of teacher gossip mode. So almost, this is from LBC. Almost a third of school pupils are receiving extra time at their GCSEs and A-level exams. So that's the kind of the overall figure. Obviously, this then has triggered an article in The Spectator from Simon Cook around kind of private schools and what they're doing. So we need to explore that. We've got the data that's been in Schools Week as well about kind of the proportion of students getting the extra 25% has massively risen, whether you're in a secondary state school or in a private school. So whatever you're absolutely right with your initial analysis. Whatever data you look at, doesn't matter what school you're in, more students are accessing extra time. So I guess there's 2 kind of lines of inquiry. Why do we think that is? Why do we think then that the private school one is a bit higher? It's always been higher, but why is that the case? And kind of, I think another thing to explore is how do schools actually accommodate all this? Coming up to the summer, what is a reasonable request now with all this? Is it that, I mean, in some places it could be that a hall is a plus 25% area, because that is the kind of the percentage of people doing it. So loads of questions there, I know, but kind of
we'll take one by one.
So go with kind of the why. Why is this a thing? Why more people? Yeah,
because parents are gaming the system and giving the children every advantage that they can give them, and they are pushing and pushing and pushing. Some parents have had to push hard to get their children access arrangements, and they carry forward from primary to secondary that fight instinct, the tigerish mothers that you see sort of, wanting the best for their children. Every parent wants the best for their children in that sense. And some parents have figured out that if you keep pushing and keep pushing, you get your children an advantage. It is simply gaining an advantage. And I think those children with parents who are more pushy, more professional, more middle class, have got the cultural capital and the nous, the moxie sometimes, and the barefaced cheek to push. And there are children who are getting more access arrangements because, quite simply, some Senkos find the Senko at the moment. Find a school. I know a local school that's gone through 4 Senkos in a year. I mean, it's a job. You want to try and do that job at the moment. There's an increased demand. There's also legitimate people. You got to figure out who are those individuals who are legitimate. And one of my biggest bugbears is that there are children who are getting more than they require, at the detriment of children who don't have advocates, who don't have parents with cultural capital, who don't have the moxie, and who
So,
don't
so,
have,
so, so, so,
frankly, who don't
so
have the advocates and the champions who pushed hard for them.
okay, so could it be? So I'm going to go and jump in there just to kind of put a bit of balance in there. Could it be actually that this figure could be even greater? That actually there is, but there is something going on in society. We either within our understanding of need, okay, because we've had this conversation before. We had it with the Robbie Williams show the other week, where children for years have not had any access arrangements when clearly they should have done. All of a sudden, parents now have the knowledge to identify their own children and are just correctly, pursuing, a legitimate kind of process. And if everyone kind of, as you said, had the same education and understanding of the situation, this figure would be absolutely kind of enormous. It wouldn't be as low as it is.
No, the simple answer is the exam system is not fit for purpose any longer. Nor equally is our over-examination of the children, the anxiety the exam system causes, the fundamental fear the exam system causes. And that is because our children don't have resilience or stoicism. So let's go the other way. Our children now, they just don't have the same mental courage, fatigue. They just cannot cope. We see that with mental health issues. We're not making our children resilient or strong enough. We're breaking down far too many barriers to be the old Vygotsky on it. Quite simply, if you had the opportunity to give your child an advantage and to give them an easier exam, how many parents would try and say, I want to give my child the most rigorous and most difficult exam possible, and the exam grade is going to reflect their ability? Or I'm going to give my child every advantage to try and game the system to give them every advantage of getting higher grades so they get to the next stage of their education level. It's almost like education from a computer game.
How many generations, think about this this generation of students who are going to be sitting this exam this year, 5 years ago, how many generations of children were told, there's a pandemic, you're in lockdown, you have a high chance of getting a very serious illness? Has that kind of affected them in ways that we are not yet to understand?
Honestly,
so although we're identifying lack of resilience, is that just a natural reaction to a very good
children
situation?
Are elastic. Children's brains are elastic. Children recover. Children are flexible. Children's brains are very, very elastic.
Have they ever been tested in that environment? I mean, it's such an extreme environment.
What did the majority of our children do during lockdowns? Sat in their bedrooms, had a great time.
Well, we think that from the outside, but internally, how is that all processed?
I'm not buying into that. I think we have given far too much credence to that, and I think we've used that far too often as an excuse to say, "Oh, COVID." How long was school actually off? How much disruption really was there? Yes, it had an impact, but we cannot keep using that as an excuse. The exam system is broken.
I'm not using it as reaction, but I'm just talking about, there's got to be something behind these figures. Yes, there will be people that game a system, but there's always gamers in a system. But that doesn't really take into consideration, in state schools in 2019, so the year ago, hold fire, 17.2%. That figure is now 26.5%. And rightly so, we could identify people that we know in our schools or our education setting that are definitely in need of extra time, who never do it. So let's say for argument. Let's say for argument's sake, that's 1 second. Let's say that argument could add a 2 or 3% onto that. We're nearly looking at 30%, which is essentially the third figure that we end up with. So what I'm interested in doing is understanding why this figure keeps on rising. Okay,
because giving your child an advantage is the way forward. It's a sense of there are children who are definitely entitled to extra time. There are children entitled to, when you talk about visual, absolutely, they need visual aids. They need larger fonts. There are children who need dyslexic and they need different colored paper. Absolutely. I'm not having to go with that. We need to meet the needs of individual people who have actually got legitimate needs. Honestly speaking, there are those out there who are just realizing, you know what? If my child has extra time, that gives them an advantage and it gives them an extra sort of leg up. And that's how we play it. I mean, it's entitlement. It's competitive. We have created a competitive education system of winners and losers. What parents want their children to be losers? So some parents are going to say, at the end of the day, I want my child to win. What can I do to get my child to win? And we have the snowplowing parent phenomenon. I think that the way education is now, it's choice. Labour did this. Labour did this about choice, choose the right school, get schools to compete against each other. We have literally created a society where it is dog eat dog. And why not? Why shouldn't I? If I can get away with it and I can try it, why can't I get my child extra time? Brilliant. That's a good idea. And the problem is there are as many really honest people out there whose children actually need the help. And the resources that should go towards those people, noble as they are, aren't getting over to there. So you're right about the number of people. So there are those getting more than they should, and there are those exactly the same society. There are those who have got plenty of wealth and money, and then there are those poor people who can't even get benefits. I'm really sorry. That's just the unfairness of our society. And unfortunately, the way the system is set up just benefits people who push hard, who've got the social nous, the capital, the moxie, the get up and go, the cultural capital to push hard and get what they want for their children. Yeah. And that is unfortunate. I think we're just seeing a lot of more selfish individuals who don't care about anything else except getting what they want. And if you turn around and say to them, I've only got so many, so many children we can give access arrangements in some schools, or so many TAs, because of course they think it's an endless supply. If you have, children who are being scribed to, where do you get these scribes from? You need teaching assistants. So you turn around to a parent and say to a parent, I'm really sorry, but your child's needs aren't that high compared to this child. Would it be okay if your child didn't, have a scribe because they seem to be coping without it? Try that conversation for size, because what you're going to get, my entitled. The whole society thing is just gone. People want what they want now, and they're basically pushing to get what they want. And I understand that. As a parent myself, I completely get that. But people are gaming the system because the system's there to be gamed, because they've created education as a game.
Yeah. So the big prize to winning would be, if you've got the means, you'd come out of state education. If you're playing the kind of winner takes all, having the funds to go to private school would make a difference. The data suggests in 2000, this is in Schools Week, in 2019, 26.3% of students had the extra 25%. Now this year that's jumped to 41.8%. So that suggests, doesn't it, that parents with children with requirement of needs in school or extra time are going to take their children out of the mainstream education and put them into private education. I get that, smaller classes, that type of thing. So I think this idea that private schools themselves are gaming. I can't see private schools corrected, but I think the amount of people with SEND needs are likely to end up in private school if you have the funds to do so. Why would you, if you had the money, why would you put your child through a class of 35 and have the Robbie Williams experience and then 25% at the end? And then or jump to a private school.
And that's an argument some of the opponents of VAT in private schools have made, is that the private schools, and one of our presenters, Christopher Vold, who teaches in a private school, when we posed this question, said, well, statistically speaking, there are more SEND children in the private education than there is in state education for exactly those reasons. And again, it fits the model of parents trying to do what they think is right for their children, trying to get the best advantage for it, and gaming the system sounds harsh, but it is playing the game, isn't it? It's literally trying to, and some rightly so do what they think is right for their children, and it's got to be the right fit. But others, I'll be honest with you, are just selfish.
I understand your point of view, but I also agree. I also think it's worth exploring. Just as a society, we think about the environment, food, other kind of externalities with a child. And are they having an impact on SEND?
Massively.
Technology, all these things, are they having this kind of effect? So I'm not saying it's an excuse for anybody. Let's throw in this group. Let's throw in pandemic, mobile phones, increase in sugary drinks, increases in processed
lack
food,
of sleep,
you know,
working parents, loss of community,
working
loss
parents.
of
Yep. We kind of encapsulate all that externality and then say, this is the child, this is the outcome, this child. It kind of makes sense to me that child would have some SEND requirements with all that we know about biology and the environment and all that stuff. The likenesses, because I know how I feel if I've kind of had a couple of days or a couple of weeks on kind of nasty food and high caffeine drinks and that type of thing, lack of sleep. You're not with it, are you? You're not yourself. So therefore, does that then create over time,
I think it's a toxic mix,
anxiety, all that stuff?
Yeah, it's a toxic mix. Our society is the way we're burning out. We're burning the kids out. Yeah. And what I would concede your point with is the likes of the pandemic, the chaos coming out of that did trigger the lack of inconsistency, some behaviors that we hadn't seen in children. And that took a while for the new norm to kick back in. I will completely concede that. And I've seen some children who are out of routines. We have the attendance issues. So there is a lot of things going on there. However, are we better at identifying children's needs? We are. But are we better at meeting their needs? I don't know what their needs is any longer, because what you get now is some parents who say their children's need is this. And you think, okay, do you know what the child needs? So sometimes there's a parent saying, my child needs this. And you think, actually, I'm the educational professional. I know you're the parent, but I'm the educational professional. I have the pedagogy here. I think I'd prefer your child to try and do it without the assistance, because that will help them in the long run. And then you get overridden going, you're not meeting my child's needs. And I'm thinking, no. I am meeting your child's needs. I'm trying to get your child to be independent. I'm trying to get your child off the assistance so that he can become and override their educational need. And I think there are some parents who are happy for their children to be caught in a dependency trap. They're almost happy to have this victimology of like, well, I've got a child with a need. And you think, well, great, you aren't helping that child, because what you're doing is fueling that child's dependency and making them feel. And therein lies some of the problems, because you take some children who actually turn around and say, you're entitled to this. They go, I don't want that. I'm okay. I'm fine. I can cope without it. And they are absolutely brilliant. Some of those children literally turn around and say, all you have to do is basically try and treat them the same as every other child, but sometimes just factor in the small little adjustments you have to make. Because you could imagine, Adam, you're walking up to a child and say, here it is. Here's your differentiated worksheet. Ha. And we used to do that, didn't we? We used to It's kind of here. And we had like many for the sum in the class. I mean, it used to be, it used to be shunned and used to be humiliating for children to be labeled SEND. And to a certain extent, you could imagine the stigma that there must be about it. And some parents, I don't think they understand that their children basically don't want to be, they don't want a big, giant, light shone on them and going, hi, my child is SEND. Does everybody know my child is SEND? And you think, the poor child's sitting there thinking, I just want to be like everybody else. Please. And I think we need sometimes to treat these children not differently. And now people can say that's controversial, but there's such a drive to meet needs and such a drive sometimes to make things so accessible that actually maybe we're not helping these children by over-helping them. And that's a snow plowing thing. And it is about getting the pitch right, an individual to individual case basis, knowing your children. And one of our problems in education at the moment is that we don't have staff who stay in school long enough, or we're losing so many staff. And that means we're losing those relationships. Because if I've got a good relationship with the parent and a good relationship with working relationship with the child, the parent might try and trust me and say, okay, my child's entitled to this, but you've suggested maybe not having the laptop and giving them extra time. And they'll trust me with that and say, well, let's try that. Whereas you get a parent who's been fighting the system, coming in saying, I want this, I want this, I want this. If I don't get this, I'm going to the governors, I'm going to the local MP. I've seen spotted pages saying the local MP's running surgeries for SEND parents. And parents kicking off and going, why aren't they giving my child what they want? You think, do you really think that's the best way to go about getting what your child wants? You want to be a parent bully? Fine. You want to bully me and use your ECHP as some sort of bulwark to threaten the school? Fine. But you think that's going to build a working relationship? Then I don't think so.
It's worth saying for spotted pages now that Brent Poland's views are his own, and he represents himself.
It's just another thing. Sometimes you think to yourself, it's unfair. It is a postcode lottery, and there are children just not getting the assistance, and there are other children you think, well, why are they getting? Oh, well, mum's complained 10 times. Oh, well, great, because mum's complaining. It's And I think it's just another way in our society you see who shouts the loudest and who threatens the most.
Is there any benefit in a school itself pursuing this, do you think, to try and get more grades? Does it help? Does it help the school? So this kind of the school is supporting this, isn't it? In terms of, I'm not entirely sure how it works. Once you get exam arrangements, is there more funding for the school?
Yeah, some children come with extra funding. That's one of the things I've pushed back on.
That's the ECHP, isn't it?
Yeah, and some schools are quite creative with how they spend that money. It's like those old days of pupil premium money. And again, when your Ofsted guys come in and they want to go, how have you spent your pupil premium money? How are they spending the SEND funds? So there is funding for some children come with funding, but here's the controversy.
So do you think parents should be a little bit more proactive in chasing where that money
been spent on
money going? It should be more transparent. So this is something that Ofsted could actually say, couldn't they? Actually, this could be a really good point of Ofsted in terms of an auditor, a financial auditor. This school has had X amount of money. Where has that money gone? And I guess that could show up, in these larger trusts. We'd have to prove where this money is going for certain.
It is the type of thing like people premium. They go, "Oh, we bought these laptops for these children," and what you need is, and again, accountability is. You need that sort of this is the money what's been spent on. This is the effect of it. This is the impact it's had. Spent this money on SEND. Here's how it's uplifted certain grades. Because schools are under pressure when it comes to. When I'm asked about my data, it's like how your people premium disadvantaged students. Your SEND students. So it is.
I know they do, but I haven't spent. I'm not kind of an expert in this because I haven't taught lower school for a number of years. But I remember in the days where I did teach kind of year 7, year 8, it wasn't particularly clear to me. Yes, I had to do that. I had to log kind of what I was doing for this, but I didn't necessarily see any extra resource made available to me for the children with SEND needs. I don't remember kind of having a kind of, I could access a little bit of pot of money. I've got 5 students in this class and I do some ICT. Can I get that money? I can't get that money.
I'm lucky to get glue sticks at the moment. So extra funding for SEND, then good luck. And when we talk about, pay rises coming out of school efficiencies, we have a SEND crisis. We have an increased demand in SEND. Some of it's legitimate for reasons. I think you've hit the nail on the head with regard to changes in society. I think we've identified the children more. But for children who aren't identified, there are situations where we know we have children who are SEND, but they have not been diagnosed. And you have situations where the resources have to be spread to them. Because what do you do with that child? That child's got SEND. And yet you do sometimes look, and I'm sure some of our listeners will know, think carefully of a child who's SEND, who has lots of resources, and think, okay, do they need all that? They're entitled to all that. And then think of a child who you definitely know is SEND, is waiting for a diagnosis, doesn't have a diagnosis, and you're thinking to yourself, where's the resources and help for that? Because they live in a different postcode. We've got that issue because I live between Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. And depending on your postcode of where our intake comes from, we've always had, if the child is one city, another city, one county or the other county, depends on how many hours they used to come with them and many paid hours they used to get. And it was one of those biggest disgraces when you look at a child and you think, how is this child not being state admitted? Are we absolutely having a giraffe? Come on. After 2 weeks of getting a year 7 child, you can just simply go, come on. And then you look at another child and went, okay, how have they done that? And then you realize the postcode and the unfairness and the cultural capital and the parents' sort of background, etc., etc. And they know the rules of the game of the system. And that's my problem. It's like everything else. We have an unfair, uneven system. And this is another example, like the exam system itself, because let's be honest, some schools game the exam system as well as the SEND in the exam system, which you alluded to, it's just all part of the bigger game of, the exam system is there to be gamed. SEND in the exam system seems to be there to be gamed. It's a game, and if you win that game, you get good value added, you get good results, you get a banner out, and you get yourself in the local newspaper, you get more people coming to your school, and you earn more money, and you're a successful trust. Whack you! Congratulations, you played the game.
This is the tie-in with exams and Ofsted, isn't it? Because it's the Ofsted poster people want. that's they want that word outstanding, which is the bigger problem. So the last part of that kind of group of questions, then, when it comes to kind of the exam season come May, how's this going to work? 26% of students are going to require some kind of adjustment to their kind of exam arrangements. Is that in a kind of a crumbling state school? How is that actually going to kind of work?
We're running out of rooms. We're actually physically running out of places. We're running out of rooms to put our access arrangements. We're running out of staff to describe. We're running out of resources. We quite simply don't have the capacity.
Yeah. So the school's going to grind to a halt, isn't it, because of exams? To make sure these exams are done.
And parents going to come in and say, "My child, your school has not fulfilled my child," straight on to Ofsted, and the fear that some schools have of, and also I'd say guilt. We're guilted into we failed, and you think we can only do so much. We can only do so much, and I do feel what I feel guilty and horrible about is when I know genuinely there are children who need help, need the resources, and they're not statemented. But then when you're under pressure and say we can't statement that, we physically can't take any more statemented children, we haven't got the capacity. When you say, when you try and say to parents, seriously, do you know what you're asking is a resource stretch? They don't see that, and I think that's the disconnect between some parents and the way schools are, because it's choice. It's like if the school's not doing what they want, they'll just put pressure on. They'll threaten Ofsted, and I think I've seen far too many examples of that, where it is shout loudly, get what you want, and that is just that's not the way to go about it. That's a form of bullying in my book. And I go the other way. There's people who get nothing out of the system based on their postcode, based on their cultural capital, based on the class, based on the fact they don't know how to even play the game themselves. So you talk about cyclical situations. Now, it's an interesting one that neurodiversity and stuff like that can run in families. And for instance, if you're from a background that is neurodiverse and you didn't do well at school yourself, there is a cyclical nature to some of this that I think it plays a part, where the parents themselves don't know how to and think that that's normal. So there are children and people out there who I think are neurodiverse and who are struggling and who have got learning difficulties, but the parents themselves have got learning difficulties. The children have got learning difficulties. They need more help than anything, but yet they're the least likely to kind of be able to access the help, if that makes sense. Do you see the cycle that I think can be perpetuated in this, unfortunately? But it will rumble on, it will break, and then the Labour government, I think, are going to have to do something pretty sharpish and something quick about both the exam system and the SEND crisis. I think both of those are connected in the story.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm just while you're talking, I was just looking on the government website for the 2023-24 data. EHC plans currently stands at 434,359,000. SEND support without EHCP stands at 13.6% of all students. EHC plans stand at 4.9% altogether. There was just in terms of numbers, there was an increase of 101,000 year on year for SEND. The overall figure of SEND as a collective is 1.6 million students at the minute, which
There's
is
about 9 million students in education, so that's 1 in 8 students.
So it's an eighth of students now has SEND. So what would that be? A rough class of 30. You're going to get 3 kids, really, aren't you?
3 to 4 kids, yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4
and
kids.
One with ECHP as well. So and one with
Yes, and some of them could be kind of quite serious needs as well. That are going to need some like real adjustment in terms of like actual access to the room and things like that. So
and what you said earlier on, I think, is a very poignant point. If every child who's waiting on a waiting list to be tested is tested, where are you with that?
Yeah. So
this is why there's a pushback. This is why I think there's a pushback to say. Reclassify ADHD as, I think there's going to be a pushback to say, well, no, maybe, we shouldn't meet the needs. Maybe this, and you're seeing this already. You're seeing people now going, oh, nonsense. You were saying, this is all environmental. This is not legit. People are making this up. I don't agree with that. I genuinely think there are a lot of children out there who are SEND, and we are.
No, I'm not. I just want to correct what you're saying. I'm saying that the environment is causing an increase in this.
I think so. It's accentuating. I think it's bringing it to a head.
So maybe potentially kind of autism and ADHD, for example, are being caused. I think there needs to be exploration of, are these being caused by a certain event at some point in the genetic coding?
Or the environment brings out something more mild, becomes more heightened.
Yes, there's that as well. Yeah.
There may be the environmental stimulation which creates the behavioral patterns and the pathways, which in turn starts to create behaviors at a younger age. And therefore, somebody who may have had a milder version of something like ADHD is now more stimulated. The brain is now, pathways are being pushed into certain directions. And also, let's be honest with you, I think the way that the primary schools, the SATs and everything else, the competitive nature of society, the way that the kind of, I must say capitalist, but the neoliberal kind of idea of success and failure. You take people saying, oh, model it in this school. This is a successful school. We have a system which always is going to have failure. Because in order to have exam results in your bell curve, which we often mention, there has to be children who don't do well versus children who do well. We've created this competitive system of success and failures. And therefore, unless we reject the successful, this sort of model of success and failure, then we're always going to have parents who are going to say, I don't want my child to be the failure. And in the instance of people who may have themselves suffered from neurodiversity, they're working twice as hard to say, well, I don't want my child to have to suffer the way I had to suffer. And I fully understand the desire from some parents to change the outcomes for their children. Absolutely. But I think some of it's driven by the negative experiences they may have had that they're undiagnosed. So I think there's an awareness in society of how many people of friends have I known turn and said, I think I might be a little bit, I'm going, yeah, I think you might be. I think everybody to a certain extent, Adam, has some issues about how they learn. I think we all do.
Yeah, but
everybody has, otherwise every one of us would walk into every lesson and go, hey, this is easy, this is easy, this is easy, this is easy. I think we all have some difficulties. It's a question of where do those difficulties become an actual physical learning difficulty that is neurodivergent or etc. And I think there has to be that separation between, legitimate difficulties that people have, a physiological thing versus, and are there parents out there who think that their child just struggles at school and is finding a way to maybe give them an extra little bit of help?
Yeah, Martin Oliver's called this. He spoke to the select committee at the beginning of the month. He calls it. He called the situation in a minute a lose-lose situation, and he also said it's the biggest issue affecting schools in England at the minute. As we're given the figure of 101,000 increase, the government itself, the Department of Education, has announced 750 million pounds to increase funding for SEN pupils in the mainstream.
That's a lot.
But again, it's kind of it's not a lot of money, and also kind of if you're a teacher, a kind of frontline teacher, do you see any of that money to actually kind of put into your lessons? You just kind of expected to do more with less in most of the time.
Is not going into the classroom. And I say again, we are seeing a dwindling stock of specialist teaching assistants as well. This is a double system, double whammy. We have less capacity, less staff to be able to cope with the increased demand of SEND, plus also frustrated parents who are more likely now to go and complain and blame the blame game. Let's be honest. You're not meeting my child's needs. You're not meeting my child's needs. I'm like, what do you want me to do? Come on. Sometimes we're just doing our best. And I get the frustration some parents have, but they've just got to work with some schools and just try and help as much as possible. And I really don't think that some people do. I think we are a barrier to what they want. And unfortunately, I've seen enough experiences where it doesn't matter how hard you work or how much you do, unless they get what they want, they will literally guilt you, bully you, until literally force the school. And then there are genuinely parents who are in full, battle mode because the school isn't cooperating. And it's such a horrible system, because sometimes the parent is absolutely right. The school is bang out of order. And then there's other times the parents are just not understanding the constraints the school has, the resources the school has. They're not seeing the bigger picture, and they're not being fair. And it is on a case-by-case basis. And I think up and down the country, it depends where you are, who you are, the postcode lottery. Some parents are banging their head against a brick wall. They're not getting funding from councils. Schools aren't listening. They've not got the resources. And then there's other schools who just can't do enough. And then parents are like, well, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. Yeah, it's just an absolute mess. It's a mess, Adam. It is an absolute mess.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt just to give you a chance to get a good deep breath in. Surely you're pleased to hear this, though, that Martin Oliver is kind of, I think, on our side here, because he's thinking, we'll just part the funding bit for a minute, but just in terms of the language he's using, the select committee, I think that we can direct schools to be more inclusive and reward those doing a difficult job. In terms of the Ofsted inspection framework itself, he's saying that the new kind of judgments need to recognise the work done by schools to be as inclusive as possible for increasing the number of SEN pupils in mainstream education. So there's almost like an acknowledgement there that what you're doing is difficult. And actually, some schools that have a lot of SEND students may have lower exam results, but the idea that they're still making it inclusive is going to be kind of rewarded through a kind of positive scorecard, essentially, through the Ofsted inspection framework, which is a lot more fair than what we've had before.
That's more fair. That's more equitable, because you imagine a situation where some controversial schools, and you look at the SEN and say, oh, look at those exam results, and you look at the percentages and you go, And, I think that comes down to things like off-rolling is part of that, where some schools are so driven by their exam results, narrow curriculums at GCSEs, choosing the options. I think there's too much of what the school's benefit is rather than the children's benefit. And that might also be the case when it comes to SEND. And I say again, it's on a case-by-case basis, a school-by-school basis, a child-by-child basis, a postcode by different postcode basis. But depending where you are in the country, depending on your school, depending on your child's needs, it is an absolute mess.
Yeah.
It is an absolute mess.
I think it's also important to say that some schools, I think Martin Oliver is kind of on this. He's made a point about kind of systematic failings, that if you're in an area where kind of social care isn't good, health care is not good, and that type of thing, actually there's a systemic problem in your area that then impacts on what's going in the school anyway. Ofsted completed, according to the BBC article here, Ofsted completed 38 area-wide inspections on SEND last year, and MPs were told that 12 councils, the council was failing, and 16 inconsistent, and 12 to be positive. So on top of all of that, all of those areas have schools within it who are going to be struggling with SEND because of those kind of systematic failings in that council.
My local council got absolutely slated, but then I also know it's been hollowed out in the last generation.
Yeah.
So its ability to do the job which it's tasked to do, and the number of schools it manages because of semi-privatization of multi-academy trusts. I think that comes into it as well. How are multi-academy trusts meeting the needs of SEND pupils? How much of a priority is that to them? It's just the lack of accountability. And I do understand why some parents are trying to game the system and get the children as many advantages as possible. But that's because the system has been created in that way. They are only responding to what I think is a system that is there to be gamed. And do I blame them? No. Does it have a massive consequence and impact? Absolutely. It is a drain on resources sometimes that is taken away from the most needy. And it is another example of how this country operates, where the most needy don't get what they need, and the least needy sometimes get every advantage. And it is just got to stop, because education is meant to be a leveler. It's meant to be a social mobility leveler. And here's another example of that not happening. And that is going to be a problem for society, because these children with those needs aren't met in school. Where are they going to go after that? Are they going to be productive citizens? Are they going to be earning taxes? What is the future for them? And it's such a short-sighted, horrible way to manage an education system, is just basically not to meet the needs of some children who In other words, it's actually in your best interest in order to help them in the future, because they could then in the future be a drain in the NHS, on the mental health services and everything else. We need people to be resilient and stoicism. We need our children to be productive members of society. And if they can't get a good education, then we are in big trouble as a country, because that's lack of investment. The country will decline and go backward even more than it is. And education needs to be a lot tighter, a lot more consistent, and a lot fairer, or else what are we going to have? Winners and losers. We can't sustain this winners and losers educational system. It's just not. It's not going to work. In the long term, it's like the property market. It's going to crash. It is crashing.
Yeah.
But
The bubble's going to burst.
the minister's standing up on gains in education since the last 14 years. Are you?
Yeah. Well, as always, Brent, we come to the end with just more questions, if any. It's one of them, but a really kind of lively chat. Thank you for everyone who's kind of listened tonight. I just want to say before we go tonight that this show has been sponsored by John Catt Educational, publishers of professional book development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore a full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR 2425 for 20% off your order. We're also sponsored by USA Today. Your students could study in the USA. USA Study is your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources and university programs, scholarships, application requirements, all in one place. Get easy to access tools, personalized timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars from administration officers to help you stand out, help your students stand out as well. Visit usstudy.co.uk today, because every student deserves the opportunity to study in the USA. And Teachers Talk Connect is live in Manchester on Sunday, the 1st of March 2025. So join us for that. You'll be joining me and Brent and a host of special guests, including Lee Parkinson, who's Mr. P ICT, Kate Jones, and Vic Goddard to attend subject-specific CPD sessions and experience amazing network opportunities too. Tickets are free for teachers and leaders. Visit ttrradio.org to find out more. And if you want to get involved with Teacher Talk Radio as well, please follow us on Twitter and go to that website, and you can find out lots more information about being a host on the show, which me and Brent can kind of stand for, and is excellent CPD, because you get a chance to do a bit of research and a bit of look into lots of different things around the education sector. But there are loads of stuff all the time on podcasts. You can go onto Spotify and listen to podcasts. You can listen to shows like this on YouTube. There's just lots of great stuff going on all the time.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting